Picture yourself standing in your own driveway on a cold morning, keys in your hand, looking at a car you were told would outlive you. You bought it because someone swore it was bulletproof. Toyota or Honda? The safe choice. The last car you'd ever need. But what if the safe choice was the wrong one? Not for everybody. For you. For the way a person past 70 actually drives. I found something buried in warranty documents and engineering data that flips the whole reliability question upside down. The engine most people call the most dependable on Earth may be the one quietly destroying itself in your garage, and it has almost nothing to do with the badge and everything to do with your daily routine. I'm going to walk you through exactly how I figured this out, the class action paperwork that first tipped me off, and one thing you can check on your own dipstick this weekend that tells you in 10 seconds whether your engine is in trouble. You don't need a mechanic. You don't need a single tool you don't already own. I'll be honest with you. I didn't believe it either. I've driven both brands for 40 years. I trusted them the way you trust an old friend. So when a fellow I know at a parts counter muttered that he sees more low-mileage engines come apart than high-mileage ones, I laughed at him. Low mileage, gentle driving, that's supposed to be the dream. That's supposed to be the reward for taking care of things. Then I stood there in that cold driveway one January morning, watching my neighbor's spotless sedan with barely 60,000 miles on it get loaded onto a flatbed, engine seized, and something in me said, "Hold on. That man babied that car. He drove it to church, and the pharmacy, and nowhere else. He did everything right. And it died anyway. So I started pulling the thread, and what I found made me angry. Let me start where the trail started, because the first door I opened seemed to prove everybody right. Toyota is the most reliable. Honda is right behind. Case closed. When I dug into the long-term data, Toyota really does come out ahead in most of the big surveys. The consumer research groups that track these things year after year put Toyota near the top of the pile for engines that cross 200,000 miles without major surgery. Honda sits close, sometimes right beside it, sometimes a notch below. On paper it looks like a coin toss where both sides win. But the surveys measure the wrong thing for us. Here's what nobody says out loud. Those reliability rankings are built on averages. They lump together the salesman who puts 30,000 highway miles on a car every year and the retired widow who drives 4 miles round trip to the grocery store twice a week. To the survey, both are just data points. But those two engines live completely different lives. One runs hot and long and clean. The other never even reaches full operating temperature before it's shut off again. And that difference, that one difference, is where the whole story turns. Because engines were never designed for the second person. They were designed, tested, and rated for the first. Therefore, the moment your driving stops looking like the test, the reliability numbers stop applying to you. You are not the average. You are the exception the average hides. I'll show you how deep that goes. But first I need to tell you about a specific engine and a specific lawsuit, because that's the document that turned my suspicion into something solid. Let me open the second door, and this one has a name and a date on it. In the years around 2007 through 2011, Toyota built a 4-cylinder engine they called the 2AZFE. It went into the Camry, the RAV4, the Scion, some of the most trusted names they had, and it developed a reputation for something that should never happen to a Toyota. It burned oil, not a little. Some owners reported losing a quart every 800 to 1,200 miles. Now think about what that means for the way we drive. If you're only putting 3,000 or 4,000 miles a year on the odometer, you might go months between oil changes. You trust the little sticker on the windshield. You wait for the mileage. But if that engine is quietly drinking a quart every 1,000 miles and you're not opening the hood to check, the oil level drops below safe long before the sticker ever tells you to come in. The engine runs low. Then it runs dry. Then it's gone. It got so bad that a class action lawsuit was filed, and Toyota eventually agreed to extend warranty coverage on the oil consumption problem for affected engines. Read that again. The most reliable engine maker in the world had to legally extend warranties because their motors were eating oil. That's not a rumor from a forum. That's a settlement with a paper trail. So I thought, all right, that's Toyota. Surely Honda is clean. Therefore, I went looking at Honda, and what I found was worse, and it was aimed directly at people who drive short and slow. Honda, chasing better fuel economy, leaned hard into two technologies. On their bigger engines, the V6 family, they use something called variable cylinder management. On their newer small engines, the 1.5-liter turbocharged 4, they use direct injection with a turbo. Both were built to sip less gasoline. Both created problems that get dramatically worse the gentler and shorter you drive. Let me take them one at a time, because this is where it starts hitting home. Variable cylinder management is a clever idea on paper. When you don't need all the power, the engine shuts off some of its cylinders to save fuel. Coasting down a hill, cruising flat, the computer quietly puts half the engine to sleep. Sounds brilliant. But those sleeping cylinders cool down while their neighbors stay hot, and that uneven life causes the piston rings to lose their seal, which lets oil slip up into the combustion chamber and burn. The result is oil consumption and fouled spark plugs. And the motor mounts, the rubber and fluid pieces that hold the engine steady, wear out faster because the engine is constantly shaking as it switches modes. Here's the cruel part. The car that spends its life gently cruising, never worked hard, never revved, the exact way a careful older driver treats a vehicle, is the car that lets those cylinders sleep the most. The gentleness is what wears it out. But the turbo engine story is the one that made me put my coffee down. Let me open that door all the way, because this is the heart of it. Honda's 1.5-liter turbo, the one they put in the Civic and the CR-V in the late 2010s, developed what mechanics started calling oil dilution. In a direct injection engine, especially a turbo, tiny amounts of raw gasoline can wash past the piston rings into the oil pan. In a normal long drive, the engine gets hot enough to boil that gasoline back out. It evaporates and gets burned off. No harm done. But if you never drive long enough to fully heat the engine, that gasoline stays in the oil. It builds up. The oil level actually rises, and the oil turns thin and smells like a gas station. Thin, fuel-soaked oil doesn't protect metal. It's like trying to cook with water instead of butter. And what kind of driving leaves an engine never fully warmed up? Short trips, cold starts, 4 miles to the store and back. Idling in the driveway to warm up on a winter morning and then only going a mile. In other words, the daily reality of millions of retired people. Honda had so many complaints, especially in cold climates, that they issued service bulletins and software updates, and in some regions extended the warranty on it. Owners in cold parts of the country reported their oil level climbing past the top mark on the dipstick and their oil reeking of raw fuel. In the coldest states, there were product updates specifically tied to it. So now I had it in black and white. Two of the most trusted engine families on the planet, one Toyota, one Honda, both with documented failures. And both failures share one terrifying trait. They punish the careful, low-mileage, short-trip driver the hardest. The very person who thought they were doing everything right. That's when the question in the title stopped being about badges for me. Toyota versus Honda. Which is less reliable for someone over 70? The honest answer is, it depends less on the brand and more on which specific engine is sitting under your hood and how it matches the way you actually live. Let me give you the piece that finally made it make sense, because it explains why this happens to good cars owned by good people. Therefore, I went past the marketing and into the engineering standards, and there's the culprit. Every one of these fuel-saving features, the cylinder shutdown, the direct injection, the turbocharging, exists for one main reason: fuel economy ratings and emissions rules. Automakers are graded on a government fuel economy standard, and that grade is measured on a test. The test uses a specific driving pattern on a machine in a lab. It is not your life. It is a controlled cycle designed to produce a number that goes on the window sticker and satisfies the regulators. So the engineers optimize the engine to shine on that test. They add the cylinder deactivation and the direct injection because those tricks pull the test number up. And the test does not run 4-mile trips in freezing weather over and over the way you do. The test warms the engine and keeps it in a comfortable range. On the test, oil dilution barely shows up. On the test, the sleeping cylinders don't cause trouble. The engine passes with flying colors, earns its sticker, wins its awards, tops its reliability average. Then it gets sold to a 74-year-old woman who drives it 2 miles to the hairdresser, and it slowly poisons its own oil. And nobody warned her, because on paper it was perfect. That's the thing that got under my skin, and if you want to go even deeper into this kind of recovered knowledge, I have to mention something before we continue. I put together a series of digital books, First Moves, Deep Mastery, and the Senior System that cover exactly this territory. The practical information that was always yours to have, but that nobody ever sat down and walked you through. They're available in the description below, and if what you've heard today rang true, I think you'll find them worth your time. That's the thing that got under my skin. Nobody set out to hurt you. But the whole system is aimed at a number that has nothing to do with how you drive, and you're left holding the repair bill. The features that make the sticker look good are the features that don't survive gentle, short, real-world use. And the more careful you are, the worse it gets, which is exactly backward from everything we were ever taught about taking care of a machine. But let's keep going, because the engineering side of this goes further than most people expect. Now maybe you're sitting there thinking, this is all fine for people with newer cars and fancy turbos, but my car is older and simpler, so none of this touches me. I want to speak to you directly for a minute because this is the part that matters most for your exact situation, and I'm not going to hand you theory. I'm going to hand you things you can do this week. If your car is older, say from before roughly 2010, you probably don't have the turbo dilution problem, and that's genuinely good news. But you are not off the hook, because the oil consumption issue and the short trip damage still apply to you, maybe more, because older engines have more miles and more wear on those piston rings already. So here is the first thing you do, and it costs nothing. Stop trusting the mileage sticker. If you drive fewer than about 5,000 miles a year, change your oil by the calendar, not the odometer. Twice a year, minimum. Spring and fall. Oil breaks down from moisture and fuel contamination and time, not just from miles. And the short trip driver builds up moisture and fuel in the oil far faster than the highway driver. That one change in habit protects you from the single most common way these engines die quietly. The second thing costs nothing either. Once a week, if your health and the weather allow it, take your car on one longer drive. 15 or 20 minutes, at steady speed, on a road where the engine can fully warm up. I know it sounds strange to drive somewhere just to drive. But that one weekly trip does what the 4-mile hops can never do. It gets the engine hot enough to boil off the moisture and the raw fuel sitting in the oil and the exhaust. It burns off the buildup before it can do damage. Think of it as blowing the carbon out, the way your father might have said. It was real advice then, and it's real advice now, and it's more important than ever with these modern engines. And the third thing, the one almost nobody does, learn to pull your own dipstick and actually look at it. Not for the mechanic, for you. Because your engine has been trying to tell you something all along, and I'm about to teach you how to hear it. That brings me to the last door, and this is the one I most wanted to hand you, because it turns you from a person who waits for bad news into a person who catches it first. I found this while reading through the technical service bulletins Honda released about the oil dilution problem and cross-checking it against what oil analysis laboratories tell their customers to look for. These are the outfits where you can mail in a little sample of your oil and they test it in a lab and send you a report. I read through what those labs flag as the earliest warning signs, and I realized the most reliable early warning of all doesn't need a lab at all. It needs your nose and your eyes and 30 seconds in the driveway. Here it is. Once a month, with the engine cold, first thing before you start it, pull the dipstick out. Wipe it, put it back, pull it again. Now do 3 things. First, look at the level. You know where the full mark is. If the oil is above the full mark and you didn't add any, that is not a good sign. Rising oil means something is getting into the crankcase that shouldn't be there, and on these direct injection engines, that something is raw gasoline. Oil does not create itself. If the level climbs, fuel is diluting it. Second, smell it. Actually bring it to your nose. Clean engine oil smells like oil, a little dark, a little heavy. Diluted oil smells like a gas pump. If your dipstick smells like gasoline, your oil is contaminated and it is not protecting your engine, and you should get it changed now and start taking that weekly warm-up drive without fail. Third, feel it. Rub a drop between your finger and thumb. Good oil is slick and slightly thick, and it holds together. Fuel-diluted oil feels thin and watery and runs off your fingers too fast. Milky or coffee-colored oil, or water droplets on the stick, means coolant is getting in, and that's a different and serious problem that needs a mechanic right away. 3 checks. Level, smell, feel. 30 seconds. No tools, no lift, no appointment. And it works on any engine, Toyota or Honda, 4-cylinder or 6, old or new. This is the thing the oil analysis labs charge money to tell people, and the core of it lives right there on the stick you already have. I tried it on my own car the morning after I read those bulletins. Cold engine, before coffee. Pulled the stick, brought it to my nose, and I'll tell you, once you smell fuel and oil, you never forget it. And once you know the difference, you'll check every month for the rest of your life. Mine was fine. But my neighbor, the one whose engine seized on the flatbed, I'd have bet anything his oil smelled like a service station for months, and nobody ever told him to check. He waited for the sticker. The sticker never came in time. So let me answer the question I put in front of you at the start, honestly, the way I'd want it answered for me. Which is less reliable for someone over 70, Toyota or Honda? If you're looking at newer engines, the Honda 1.5 Turbo carries the higher risk for the short trip, cold climate, low-mileage driver, because of that oil dilution, and the Honda V6 with cylinder management carries the oil-burning risk. On the Toyota side, watch that older 2AZFE 4-cylinder for oil consumption and keep the level up. But the truer answer, the one that actually protects you, is that the badge matters far less than the match between the engine's design and your daily habits. The gentlest driver, driving the most efficient engine on the shortest trips in the coldest weather, is the one most exposed, and that's the one thing no window sticker will ever tell you. The good news is that everything working against you can be beaten by 3 free habits. Change the oil by the calendar. Take the weekly warm-up drive. Read the dipstick with your own nose and fingers once a month. Do those 3, and you take back the reliability that the test cycle quietly took from you. Here's what I want you to sit with for a moment. You were sold a promise of a car that would take care of itself, so you wouldn't have to think about it. But that promise was never really made to you. It was made to a machine in a lab running a test that looks nothing like your life. What you just learned is the thing that gives you back the upper hand, the ability to know what's happening inside your own engine before anyone else does, and to keep a good car running long past the point where a careless owner would have lost it. That's who I know you are. Someone who never liked being talked down to, who would rather understand how a thing works than be told to just trust it and pay up. Someone who takes pride in handling their own affairs and keeping what's theirs running right. That instinct, the one that made you a little skeptical of the easy answer, is exactly the instinct that just saved you a $5,000 engine. Now I want to hear from you. and I mean this specifically. Go pull your dipstick this week cold before you start the car and tell me what your oil smells like. Does it smell like honest oil, or does it smell like a gas station? And tell me which engine you're driving, the brand and the year, so the rest of us can learn from what you find. Leave it in a comment below. I read them, and there are people in this community driving the exact same car as you who need to know what you discover. If you want to keep pulling these threads with me, the ones where the official story falls apart the second you start asking real questions, come along and subscribe, because that's what we do here. We recover the practical knowledge that quietly got taken from ordinary people. Next time I'm digging into something that stopped me cold, the truth about how often you really need to replace a timing belt versus a timing chain, and why one of them can strand you with a destroyed engine at exactly the mileage most retirees hit, while the other quietly saves you thousands, and almost nobody knows which one is under their hood until it's too late. Let me leave you with one more piece, because I promised I'd walk you all the way to the last door, and there's a detail in this that most people never connect, and it might be the most useful of all. When I was reading through those oil analysis lab reports, the ones people mail their samples to, I noticed something in the way they describe the short trip driver. They have a name for it. They call it severe service. Not the tow truck driver hauling loads up mountains, not the taxi running all night. Severe service, in the manual's own words, includes frequent short trips, driving in cold weather, and letting the engine idle for long periods. Read your own owner's manual and you'll find it. Buried in the back, past the part everyone reads, there are two maintenance schedules, a normal one and a severe one. And the severe one calls for oil changes twice as often. Here's the thing that made me shake my head. The way most people over 70 drive, short hops, cold mornings, warming the car up in the driveway, that is the textbook definition of severe service, straight out of the manufacturer's own manual. You qualify for the severe schedule. But the dealer quoted you the normal schedule because the normal schedule sounds better, costs less to advertise, and keeps the ownership experience looking cheap and easy. Nobody sat you down and said, based on how you actually drive, you need the severe service schedule, change your oil twice as often, or this engine will not make it. That's the whole story in one sentence. The information to protect your engine was printed in the book that came in your glove box, and the way it was buried and the way it was quietly ignored is exactly why a careful person ends up on a flatbed. The manual told the truth. Nobody read it to you. Now you know to read it yourself, and to flip to the severe service schedule, because that's the one with your name on it. So when you go out to check that dipstick this week, do one more thing. Open the glove box, pull out that owner's manual, and find the maintenance section. Look for the words severe service or special operating conditions. Read what it says. I promise you'll see your own driving described right there on the page, and you'll understand that the knowledge to keep your car alive was never secret at all. It was just sitting quietly, where no one would think to look, waiting for someone stubborn enough to ask the right question. You asked it. You're here. And now you've got what you need to prove every reliability ranking wrong in your own driveway, on your own terms, with your own two hands. Go check your oil. Take that long drive this weekend. And come tell me what you found, because someone reading these comments is about to save their engine because you spoke up. If you're still here with me, you're exactly who I made this for. I'm inviting you into the Wise Living Circle. Inside, I pick up right where we stopped with the engine-by-engine dilution guide for short-trip drivers. You can ask me your own question, and I answer you myself. No machine. Practical seniors like you belong here. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen. Cancel anytime. One click.